Good evening, everyone. We'll call the county public meeting on the county budget to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for coming out here this evening to come and review the county budget. This is the meeting where we present the proposed levy, or the levy that was passed back, the proposed levy passed back in September, and propose the budget information to the public to question and ask details about the budget in light before we pass the final levy, which will happen here likely on December 19th for the next year of 2024. If you have questions at this meeting about your property value, that would be at the separate meeting that takes place in June. That would be not this meeting, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. I'm going to kick it over to, actually, before we do that, we'll do introductions. Mike, you want to start it off?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Ketchmark, County Commissioner, District 5.
Good evening, everyone. Nadine Shane, County Commissioner of District 4.
Derek Vetch, District 2, County Board Chair. I represent the city of Monticello, Monticello Township, Silver Creek Township, Clearwater Township, Maple Lake, and Maple Lake Township.
Hello, I'm Jeannie Holland. I'm District 3, and I represent the city of Otsego and Albertville.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is Tina Diedrich. I represent the, oh my gosh, the fifth district. Why am I, I'm totally like wrong here. The first district, the Highway 55 corridor. Oh my goodness. Then we can start off laughing on this. This is good. So, thank you all for coming. Yes, so Annandale, Buffalo, and South Haven are my cities, and then 5 townships.
Administrator Kelly, you want to kick off the details about the meeting this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So those of you that have had the opportunity to meet, and those of you online watching as well, my name is Lee Kelly. I'm the County Administrator here at Wright County. So thought it would be good to just go over a few slides to give an overview of the 2024 budget and kind of where we're at in the process. So Frank, if you'd skip ahead about 2 slides, past the agenda to the budget process overview, if you would. So this is a quick representation of where our budget process is. Ultimately, it's a year-long process for the county. These are just some of the highlights. In May, we begin putting together our capital improvement plan and beginning to get the budget workbooks to departments to start bringing forward to the board, which we do in August. Have a number of meetings where the department heads bring forward through administration to the board their budget requests for the upcoming year. As Commissioner Vetch mentioned, in September, we have to adopt a preliminary tax levy and budget by the end of September. This year we did that on the 26th. And per statute, we are required, before we adopt the final budget by the end of December, to have this meeting tonight after 6 p.m. for the public to comment on this budget for the upcoming year. So if you go to the next slide, please, sir. As Commissioner Vetch mentioned, also, this is a kind of a complicated slide. It looks very busy, but it gives an overview of the total process of how property is assessed in look-back period, how those values are determined and when, how our budget is then applied onto that with our preliminary levy, and then showing that we have to have our meeting tonight is kind of towards the end of the process before we adopt our budget before the turn of the year, and then it is applied next year for the property taxes. So again, tonight's meeting's focus is on the 2024 budget. We know there's many in the room that may have questions on their valuations, and the time to appeal that has passed, but we would encourage you and would like to connect you with the assessor's office if there are questions along valuations that we could answer for you.
So at this time, is there anyone in this room that is here to discuss the value of your property or your home? Or if you're here for that, This meeting will not be able to answer those questions for you. Those would be a meeting that we can set up with you and the assessor at a later date. We don't, this meeting is purely to discuss the county budget and how the funds are allocated within the county budget. We have a sign up for the assessor to contact anyone that is here this evening to set up an appointment for them to discuss the values of your property at a later date. So you're more than welcome to stay, but if your questions are, when we open up the public hearing about your property, we'll not be able to answer those questions. All right?
All right, thank you with that. So slide 8, if you would, Frank. I can work with that. So your tax dollars at work. The county provides a number of services, as you know. That is a number of things. We have 512 miles of road, 39 county-owned bridges, almost 4,700 acres of public land that we maintain. Of that also, some of our core functions include public safety, deputies, the 911 systems, maintenance, jail. We help support the Great River Regional Library System that provides libraries in the county, as well as maintaining the vital records for birth, marriage, licenses, licensing, and passport. Public health, which provides services to the public and preventing illness and providing critical support to our communities. Financial and social services, connecting the community to service and resources designed to support individuals from their family health and well-being. Environmental services, for recycling, water management, feedlot management, and other things such as veteran services with state and federal benefits. So as I mentioned briefly, we thought it would be good to break down kind of on a per capita per month basis what you're getting for your dollars on our taxes. So the first that we had put was highway maintenance at $4.96 per month. That's a key factor of maintaining safe roads for our residents and preserving those for the way forward. So maybe jump ahead to Frank to the parks and trails. Our parks and trails is $1.31 per capita in month. We feel this is a good value for the amount of open green spaces and programs that we provide through our parks office and the opportunities for people to recreate within the county. We know that it's a feature that we have that not a lot of counties or others in similar areas have that we have going for us. So, public health, I mentioned earlier, was $1.43 per capita per month. We've certainly been aware of them in the past years. They did a lot of work during the COVID period times, along with their continuing outreach to try and be upstream of issues in the community and health. Right. Emergency response, including our sheriff's office, 911, and dispatch. This is a core function of government we value, as you can see in our mission statement earlier, providing a very safe community to live in. So it's hard to place a value on what you get for that immediate response. Great River Regional Library System is a system that provides library services throughout central Minnesota. We are a partner in that and share the cost of that, but per capita it only amounts to $1.31 per month per capita. It allows access to a great deal of services as well as DVDs and other materials, and support staff to help you do any research you may wish to do as well. So, some of the projects that the county is currently working on, you may recognize in the photo there our former government center downtown property. We're in the process of redeveloping that and selling that building with a developer for redevelopment. In the past year, we've been working to distribute the American Rescue Plan Act through a variety of programs and projects. That's included building out the broadband infrastructure in the county, providing grants to various providers, as well as providing grants and to our townships for both transportation projects. Also, a lot of improvements made to the parks properties with those funds. The opioid settlement money continues to be a focus for the Opioid Settlement Council. We've received those funds as part of the various drug company settlements and have guided that distribution to best address the public health concerns related to it. We are currently looking at the compost facility building and its current functions and efficiencies and what would best suit the public for the future going forward, and may do a different design out there. We've also worked on design and construction of a new highway Maple Lake out shop. So if you go to the next one, please, some of the things we've recently completed. We've completed expansion of the Otsego Highway Shop, sold the former Health and Human Services building on 25 and 55. We are currently in the process of implementing phase 2 of our enterprise resource planning program, Oracle Fusion, adding on to the financial system that's already been implemented, but adding to that both human capital management, payroll, and budgeting. So we'll have all of our information tied together in one system to make best budget decisions. We've distributed a number of grants through the American Rescue Plan to counties, from the county to cities and townships for various sewer and water projects. And we've worked this year to establish the aggregate special reserve fund and allocate those out. So as we look at an overview, numbers wise at the budget, the county's preliminary budget set in September for 2024 was a little over $201 million. Of that, the levy, or the amount that is collected by taxes, is approximately half of that, a little under, at $95 million. We receive, which would be a 4.8% increase over 2023's adopted levy. It should be noted that we have, in our region, experienced a great number of tax capacity growth. We estimated that at about 17.3%, which will help to offset the impact of the taxpayer of our levy for the upcoming year. And of that, 2.63% of the growth in the county is coming from new construction. So it's important to note that the increase in the levy is not the same as the property tax increase or potentially decrease you may see. There's 14 factors that will impact how your tax levy will be calculated. That may be depending on what school district you live in, city, township you live in, or a variety number of factors. Additionally, if you had a change in a homestead or you had various things on your classifications that may have changed, it may change that number as well. So if you have questions around that, again, we encourage you to sign up with the assessor's office and work through those questions. So as we look at our revenues, again, approximately half of our overall income is related to property taxes. This is a quick comparison on bar charts between 23 and 24. We did receive a little bit more in federal grants, categorical aid, and slightly more in other categories and categorical services than in 2023. So that did help offset part of our budget increasing, but not increasing the levy at the same percentage. As you look to spending for 2024, this is just kind of a quick breakdown, noting that we are a service organization and the bulk of our expenditures are tied to personnel costs, whether that's staff or associated expenses with that. Just a quick overview of that. And as we talked a little bit earlier on kind of the per capita per month, we also like to kind of break this down on how every $100 are spent. So this is what it is currently in a visual representation for the 2024 budget. So, right. So our estimated market value did see an increase of approximately 15.01% for the 2023 assessment. And as I mentioned earlier, that can vary for a variety of factors and how it may translate into your individual tax statement. So we continue to see a trend of pretty historic growth. At some point, we know the market will correct itself, and we believe that that will happen in upcoming years. So it is impacting our region, but as growth increases, it does then also impact our tax rate. As you can see, we've tried to keep our tax rate, if we go to the next slide, please, Frank. With tax capacity, we've tried to keep that flat or reduced over the past several years. We've been intentional in achieving that, and I believe that we can demonstrate here that we have again. So as it sits with 2024, our tax rate would be decreasing again for the third year in a row. So with that, the big focus of this meeting, of course, is the public comment period. We do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and have everyone have a chance in order to speak before we go on to the next round of speaking. So if we do happen to get to the hour, we will take a break. But with that, I will open it up to the floor.
So before I open the floor, can I, Frank, have you bring back this last slide here? So this is probably the most telling slide as to what's taking place in property taxes over the last 3 years. So if you look at the green area, that residential area is growing. And the reason that makes up the pie. And that in comparison to the other 4 areas that it's being compared to, those areas are not growing, and the green area is. The residential area is growing, and that's not growing entirely because of new homes. Some of it is, but a lot of it is saying that residential homes are growing in value exponentially versus that of the agricultural and commercial and industrial. So you're absorbing the burden of property taxes more as a residential home than that of a commercial, industrial, or agricultural property. Because if all things were even, the truth teller is the tax rate. If everybody's property stayed the same, or everybody's property from agricultural, residential, and commercial all increased at the same value, and the tax rate went down, then the tax burden would be shared equally. And in this case, if the tax rate went down, what you would pay would actually be less. But because with the tax rate decreasing and your value going up more than that of other areas in the budget, you're absorbing the burden of another property that's seeing a reduction. So that's the biggest thing that you want to understand, that when you see that your tax rate going down, in theory, should mean that you would see a reduction, but your value, if you saw an increase, your property is increasing in value than that of other properties in the county, so you're absorbing their share. I just wanted to point that out as we get started into the actual budget discussions. At this time, anybody that would like to come forward, please do so. We are, like I said, we are trying to keep it to around 3-4 minutes, so if it gets too lengthy, we will cut you off because there's a number of people that want to speak. I'm assuming a lot of you in the room want to speak. And at this time, anybody that would like to come up and ask questions about the budget, please do so. Just state your name so we can put that as part of the public record. Is there anyone that would like to comment for the public record?
I think it was page 17 that kind of split out. The printing is so, no, I guess it wasn't that one. Go back another one.
Mr. Chair, just so Caitlin knows, state name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Meriwether, Rockford Township. I think it was a graph that went from right to that one. It's so small, the printing underneath. Could you tell me what like the major areas are?
Sure, going from left to right.
That's all I've got to ask.
Yes, so the $22 is the general government. Going next would be the 23 would be public safety, law enforcement, corrections collectively. Then the next one would be highway at the $25. Then it would be the 16 would be health and human services. Then the purple shade would be public safety. Then over that would be Parks Department and extensions. The next color after that would be soil and water conservation, natural resources. Then the next one over that would be debt service. And then the other one is just a variety of miscellaneous expenses, veteran services, things of that nature. All right. Yes.
If I come up there and speak for a little bit, can I take a pause after about 3 to 5 minutes and come back again later?
If everybody's not taking a ton of time, Lane, I will give you more time, absolutely. All right.
So
If you want to help kick it off so people don't feel shy, Lane, I'd greatly appreciate it.
would that help the audience?
It might be some people that are new at this. Most of these people are new faces to this. So, Lane, if you want to show them the ropes.
Sure.
You and I are old hats at this.
How many years have you been on the county commissioner board?
7 years.
Has it already been 7 years?
I know.
Right.
Next year will be year 8.
Wow. You haven't even got any gray yet, though. That's what I'm surprised
I
about.
don't know. My kids tell me I got gray all the time. I don't know.
Ah,
I wasn't gray when I started. I was young then.
right. So anyway, Lane Roche in Frankfurt Township. I'm trying to, like the Free State of Jones, I'm trying to get ourselves annexed that part of St. Michael to Hanover or something else, or start our own state. But anyway, St. Michael. I know, but I'm a smart aleck, so. I want to read something that was on the Wright County webpage. And I'm going to continue with the discussion that I had here a year ago, which I understand that in the essence of time that I discontinued. This is on the newsflash, truth and taxation notices being mailed out, right? So it's a webpage on the Wright County site. The truth and taxation process was designed to allow taxpayers transparency and the opportunity to become involved in the local government budgeting process. The notices provide taxpayers with proposed tax amounts for next year based on the preliminary budgets local governments have adopted and the value of and classification sent out by the county assessor this year. And of course, you're required to send out those statements, and you're also required to have this meeting. It's a state law. Where I get wigged out always is the big T word, transparency. It frustrates me to no end that, for example, on Facebook, and Mike, this is where I'm coming back to this, that the county continues to put things that it has no business putting Facebook posts on. And I realize people will comment on it because people can't help themselves but to comment on Facebook posts. But the county really shouldn't be involved in doing this kind of stuff. For example, recently in the last 6 weeks or so, the county has commented on the Facebook posts on the proposed new state flag, and again, the Canadian Pacific Holiday Train, how the Buffalo-Hanover-Montrose referendum came out, the second week of November weather forecast, the Howard Lake, Winstead-Waverly referendum, the Northern Lights, by the way, whether they were going to be possibly out that night, and Minnesota lottery tickets, none of which has to do with our county government, that is. It has to do with our county in some cases, but none of the rest of them have to do with our county government. None of them. But the one thing that the county government hasn't done is, you would think the Truth and Taxation meeting is the most important meeting of the entire year for the public to have discourse with the county government. Right? Can I get agreement on that from you guys? And is it on Facebook? Nope. You know, the only mention it is in the very bottom of the first page, that it's part of one of the meeting times on the meeting calendar. There's nothing else on the website about truth and taxation. Nothing. Tell me I'm wrong.
Good point.
Where? I looked in the finance area. There's nothing specifically that calls out truth and taxation. I saw the budget stuff. I printed the budget, the top level budget.
We submitted it into all the local papers, had a publication about the Wright County Truth and Taxation.
And it's on your tax notice too.
In what?
It's on your tax notice.
I understand, but those are mandated. My point here is comparing the communication that's going on Facebook and that there's no communication on Facebook about this particular meeting. And I wonder why.
I just seen one that was on there. I don't know when it was posted. I did see that there was one that was put out there. I guess I didn't know what day it was posted. I guess I'd have to ask staff. I seen it out there, but it might have been 2 days ago, 4 days.
Trust me, Derek.
Pardon me?
I looked yesterday.
It was what day? November 15th. So, I mean, I guess was it supposed to be reposted a bunch of times? A lot of it depends on the number of comments as to times it reappears. The algorithm that Facebook as to how often it reappears in your feed is different than the next person. I can't speak to that because that's an algorithm through Facebook. We did put the post out there. I do know that it was out
The
there.
posting was more towards the property tax statement that people received. It wasn't specifically to encourage people to come to the Truth and Taxation meeting, to hear about the county government budgets, the county government policies and spending. So I disagree with you, sir. That's a very different thing.
You were just saying it wasn't posted, I was pointing out the date and time.
I guess the language, the subjectivity of the language, in the post itself, it does state the date of it and the purpose of the meeting. Is the wording the way you may like? I don't know, but I'd be willing to have conversations with you in the future as to how it should be marketed. I would, by all means, Lane. I'm with you. I want more here people than less.
Right, and I believe in, especially with local taxing entities, more transparency, more communication tied to how you involve the public into what's going on at the government is critical. Because people already don't know, generally speaking, what's going on behind, there's more than 4 walls around here, there's like 100 walls a year in this new government center. But my point is, people don't know. And my mission has always been to prod the county government to be more transparent. That property tax statement thing, which is just a copy of the example property tax thing, and saying you should be receiving your property tax statements or have got them, and that it did have meeting times on there, but most people don't pay attention necessarily to that. I'm talking about a general Facebook message. If that's what you're going to use as a vehicle to communicate to people, saying, like, there should have been a meeting notice sent over the weekend, as far as I'm concerned, that there was a Truth and Taxation meeting this week at 6 o'clock
Mr. Chair.
at this building.
Lane, there was a post 10 hours ago from Wright County, Minnesota. The Wright County Board of Commissioners will conduct the annual Truth and Taxation public hearing at 6 p.m. tonight in the county boardroom. Finance and administrative staff will be on hand to help answer any questions about how the county board arrived at the levy, which is a 4.8% increase from 2023. As a reminder to residents, this meeting is solely to discuss the 2024 budget and levy, the amount of the budget that was used for property tax dollars, not property valuations or tax increases from other jurisdictions like cities and school districts.
Okay, so Tina, that
A little
was,
bit more.
that's 10 hours ago, right?
Right?
Most people have already planned their day completely by then.
Well, when we put one out in November 15th, we put them in the papers last week. I mean, I will say from a county perspective, in comparison, not using, I hate to throw cities and the schools under the bus, we put a great deal of effort into marketing this evening to the public as much as possible. Could we have done more? Yes. I mean, should we put it out every day, every hour? We were very careful on how much we duplicate things because we don't want our information to become irrelevant to people. We want people to, when they see a posting from Wright County, it is a compromise of county information and information of interest so that they always want to look at what it is. That's why we have things in there that you may think are irrelevant, but it actually is what we considered. It gets people to click on it and read things. Engaging. And that's why we do that mixture. And it's done through proven methods. This is how communication works, is you need to create a readership, a number of followings. And by putting information that isn't necessarily 100% county related, it gets us more of a following that gets more people county information.
Well, one could argue that you're wasting people's time because some people they can't resist. They have to like or they have to comment on whatever it is. And it has nothing to do with county government. Nothing. Zero. The things I mentioned. Would we agree on that at least?
And that is a absolute perspective that could be taken into consideration as well. And we try to weigh the good and the bad, and we feel that getting more information to more people is more important than the few people that may dislike seeing some of the posts that maybe aren't 100% related to county government.
Chair. Lane?
Yes.
some of it's engagement, and I know for a fact that with that flag, we got, I think he said we got like 10 people to like our page, which is the goal, so that they have that information coming on their feed all the time. And just from that feed alone, he got a lot of comments, as you probably saw. They were about the flag. But then he also got a lot of people to become, to have that on their feed at all times. And that's his goal.
Well, that's not even his goal. That's our
Our
goal. That's
goal.
our goal, that we would rather have a bigger following and getting the county information out to more people, because I'd rather have more county information to 20,000 people than to have it to 100.
It's like getting a subscription to a newspaper, like enticing them to get it. You know what I mean?
Well, I disagree with the logic involved here, because I don't think it's the type of engagement that you're all looking for.
And I get that, but and we're probably going to have to agree to disagree on that. But I guess, Lane, do you got some budget questions?
Mr. Chair, I think in the interest of time, 9 minutes gone by, no budget questions. We move on to others that
We'll
might have
let him
budget
come back up
questions.
if there's no
Right,
other people.
that's all I ask.
Okay.
Thanks, Lane.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Commissioner Ketchmark. Is there anyone else that would like to comment for the record? Come on up.
My name is Pierre Eisenen. I'm in French Lake Township. So the dollars per capita, is that per like total population of?
Yep. So that's basically taking the 142,000 people and taking the county budget and dividing it out.
So if you were to divide it out per property tax payer, it would be way more for the, right?
Yeah, it's hard because you can't do it like that because not everybody pays property tax at a
No, that's
flat
what I'm
rate.
saying. If you did it per property owner,
But you have to realize that like commercial property pays at 2%, and a farm homestead under 1.89 million pays 0.5%, and a home over 500,000 pays 1.25%, and a home that's under 500,000 pays 1%. So they don't pay all equally proportioned. So you couldn't
right?
divide
But the
them up that
entire
way.
population of Wright County that's what it comes out to?
That's what it comes out to
Per person.
Per person, yeah.
So the property owners are paying way more than someone that doesn't own property.
Yes, that would be a fair conclusion from that. But then you have to look at it. There's properties where there's
So-
no people live that are commercial.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So
So, I'm a small business owner. I do carpentry services. This last year, we've had to reduce our rates. Everything's become more competitive with the inflation and, so, we've really had to tighten up our belts. I have 8 kids and I'm married with 8 kids. And now my property taxes just went up 100%. With a simple stroke of a pen, has there been any talk of reducing budgets?
we've started that process.
Like,
we
I
made a
could
lot
think
of
of-
reductions in our
I
budget
could
for the
think of,
front end.
like with the sheriff's office and public health, emergency response, that's the big one, right? $11.58 per month per person, so who knows what that ends up being for the so half of the budget is paid by property taxes, roughly.
Roughly, yep.
And then the highway maintenance departments, we see a snowflake fall and they're out in full force. Is there ever any talk of, hey, maybe we could leave the salt trucks parked, that kind of thing? Seems like there's a lot of waste there, and with the emergency response, is there ever any talk of reduction in those departments?
I guess so. I'm saying.
So we're
touch
seeing
within
a-
law enforcement. So you're saying that we think we're a little bit heavily staffed from a law enforcement perspective.
I've heard we're the heaviest staffed in the U.S., but I'm not sure if that's true, but I've heard per capita, Wright County has the most sheriffs or the biggest sheriff department.
that data is not true, so.
Sure. You know, it's very,
So like
it's
when-
deceiving because most counties have city PDs. So we have only 3 city police departments, and that is why we have the biggest sheriff's department. Whereas in Hennepin County, they have, you know, like Rogers has their own, Plymouth has their own. So it's not apples to apples.
Okay, so like in the emergency response, my cousin just had a dishwasher. It was smoking and he dialed 911 and the city of Cokato brought out the ladder truck, the entire fleet, and they called the Howard Lake entire fleet, and there was, I don't know, half a dozen sheriff's deputies that showed up as well. The first guy that got there came in with the fire extinguisher and put it out, but all the rest of the troops still came. Is there ever any? I mean, that's a lot of waste. if you
Yeah,
ask
and
me.
that isn't, none of that comes from the county budget. So your fire is all comes from your township, which it contracts with either Maple Lake or Cokato for fire service, and all of that is paid through your township taxes as they whatever city that they contract. That isn't a county expense. Ours would be strictly law enforcement and 911 dispatch and the jail and people that are housed within our jail.
Well, I would like to see reduction in all of the above. It'd be nice to see if we had a 4% reduction versus increase in budgets.
Because, and I appreciate your perspective, because the biggest thing when we look at the budget,
The other thing is my wife and I homeschool our children, so, you know, a big part of our property taxes goes to the school, which is kind of a bummer for us, because, you know, they're not going to the school. Is there anything for that?
that once again, that's under state legislation. I'm with you. If they had educational tax credits that you would be able to apply towards your own homeschooling, but that's legislation. We can't do anything about. The state legislator would have to get educational credits that are transferable, and right now that doesn't exist. So right now, you choose to homeschool or open enroll your kids to a different district, you're paying for a school that you don't utilize.
Thank you.
I appreciate those comments, though.
Mr. Chair, I just want to tell him one more thing before you leave. You're doing a good job homeschooling. It's a lot of work. I do it myself. It's a lot of work.
Thanks.
But I do hope you, I'm interested there, what you have going on in your property tax statement, because that increase, there has to be other things taking place on your property if you had a 100% increase. I don't know, there could be things, especially if you have ag property, there might have been some changes that happened in this last year that might be impacting you. So if you have ag property, after this meeting, if you're still around, I can maybe answer some of those questions for you, or at least point you in the right direction that can maybe mitigate some of those impacts in the future. Because there are some changes that if you have some wetland or wooded acres that used to be tillable green acres or never was, the Green Acres program kind of changed now, that you actually have to implement it into a new program. It no longer is included in the Green Acres program. And if you didn't fill out this sheet and put it into that program, you would have seen a huge increase on your property taxes. So, and that likely is probably what's taking place on your property tax statement.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a couple other follow-ups for Mr. Rising. Thanks for coming in. On the specific case of 6 squads at a dishwasher fire, I'll refer you to the other elected official, the sheriff. And if you can get a report number or your cousin has one, you can talk across the parking lot with someone justifying 6 squads. But I've heard these numbers be inflated by those that didn't actually see them themselves. So it could have been 3 squads got there and 3 left, and someone said it was 6 squads. So if you really want the honest, accurate, factual, get the report and then talk to them about that. And as far as city resources and fire departments, we don't weigh in on that. You can talk to them. How do you justify? But I know from history that once you start the cavalry, it's really hard to stop them, especially volunteers, because they get going and they want to get out there and help people. Homeschool, yeah, I think homeschool is the safest school. You never hear of an active shooter at a homeschool. So I'd say keep doing what you're doing. The other thing, school district related, that is not related to our scope either. That's things that could be argued and legislated by others. Oh, the other thing, I looked into this when I got on because somebody smarter than me brought it up, but how about you divide up the property taxes evenly by every parcel of ground in Wright County, which would be like 65 to 70,000 parcels. What would that look like? It came out a couple of years ago that everybody would pay about $1,400. So that would be an increase for some and a decrease for others. But then when I trotted over to finance, they said, there's a statute that says you can't do it. So I have researched it because it was worth checking into. It would be a break for some and not for others. So that's been looked at and the law stopped it there. Thank you.
Is there anyone else like to comment?
Commissioners, my name is Ryan Dunlap. I am from Otsego, where I am a city council member. In the September 26th board meeting, Commissioner Catchmark noted an additional $787,000 that could have been saved. Had the majority agreed to this, the levy would have gone from the 4.8% down to 3.93, which would have meant a difference of hundreds of dollars for some residents. Commissioner Catchmark, I came here tonight to thank you for your due diligence in your effort to reduce the financial burden on your constituents and your courage to vote no on the increase. There seems to be this pervasive myth that as long as the levy increase is less than inflation or even below the tax capacity increase, that adoption of that levy is an action worthy of praise. But using this as a measurement of success presumes that a tax increase does not add to the financial burden of Wright County residents. The truth is that real wages are down. And so your true measurement of success should be a reduction in the levy, because people have less income to spend and the money that they have doesn't buy what it used to. What I would respectfully request of you, Commissioner Catchmark, is that when it comes time to vote on this, that you do make a formal motion to reduce the levy so that the residents of Wright County may see on the record which commissioners are uninterested in reducing the tax burden on their constituents. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
Mr. Chair.
Ryan, first thing I just want to point in that statement that is untrue is that if you would lower the levy by $787,000, no one will see a $100 reduction in their property taxes. $787,000 in the reduction of the levy of our levy would equate on average to most homes a savings of less than $20, if even probably more like $5 or $6. It just dilutes down that far. So in order to see hundreds of dollars of savings on any single property, the county would have to adopt a negative levy to accomplish that. So I just want to make sure that we're not giving false narratives that if the county board made a reduction of $800,000, at the end of the day, most properties in Wright County would see a reduction on their property taxes of less than $20, and in lots of cases, probably less than $8. So in order to see substantial cuts in the hundreds of dollars, we would be talking about needing to make cuts in the $4 to $5 to $6 million.
I was talking about the difference from 4 to 8 to the 3 down. That would be hundreds of dollars for some residents.
If you went from a 4,
So just to clarify.
yeah, I want to make sure I
So I'm not
understand.
misquoted. To go from 4.8 down to the 3.93.
So even going, so 1 whole percent lowered in the levy is about $1 million.
Right.
Yep. So $1 million cut from the budget would matriculate down to a house of $425,000. It would save you about $8.
So I'm talking about the difference between the two for some residents would have been a difference of $100. They're still going to see a tax increase.
No, when they wouldn't, they literally, if you're paying $1,000 at 4.8 and we go into a 3.8, you are going to pay $992. It'll only, shaving a whole percent will likely save you between $8 and $16. It literally, $1 million reduction doesn't save you hundreds of dollars in what you pay.
Just to be clear, I'm not saying from the previous year saving hundreds of dollars. I'm talking just the difference between the two,
Just
Yeah.
this year. He's
just the
talking about
differences
this year.
between the increases in the levy.
Yeah.
He's right. Derek is right, though.
Yeah, you're only gonna see a savings. If we cut the levy, if we go to a 3.8 levy, what you was on your proposed thing that you got, your proposed statement in November 15th will go down $8 to $16 if we cut $1 million to the budget. So don't be mistaken that if we make a cut of 800, 900, or $1.2 million, you're not gonna see $100 savings. It's just, that isn't how it works. In order to see $100 savings, we have to adopt a negative levy. We'd be having to talk about cutting $4 to $6 million. So I just want to make sure that's understood.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
since that was mentioned a couple
yes.
times.
You.
And thanks for coming in. We didn't talk before, but it's refreshing to hear your comments. We were all kind of asked from finance and others, what's a comfortable number for the levy? That was hard for me because I wanted to go line by line and determine the want and the need instead of pick an arbitrary number. But when pushed, the number I came up with and the reason was from past commissioners that said, if the amount of growth matches or is close to the amount of the levy, the taxpayers will feel it less. And we saw that earlier in the presentation, I believe that figure of 2.63%. So that was my initial number, was close to that, and the rest went up from there, and we settled on above 5. Now, the 787,000, those were new staff positions that, in my mind, weren't proven a need, plus one pro service that was thrown in there. So if you look at it this way, $1 million amounts to 1 percentage point. So with my figures of 787, if the rest would have got along with that, that would have reduced it by almost 0.8%, for those that want to keep track and look at it that way. But, so that was my reasoning for that, and it's hard to pick the numbers, but the staff likes the numbers because they then can work their own budgets to figure, are we above, or are we below, do we have to make more cuts? So a lot of jockeying around to get where we're at, but for the record, that was my explanation for what you pointed out as to why I voted the way I did. Thank you.
Kevin?
Yes.
Ryan, as you know too, just so you know, that we chopped at this thing for quite some time, and we're wrestling with the same thing you are, that our sheriff's contract went up because we are at a point in time where we could not keep our deputies. And so we had to increase what we're paying our road deputies, and then thus you're seeing the same thing. It's something that we got hit with. It's the sign of the times, and you know that added to it. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't have been that much.
Come on up.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Cracked, and I live in Otsego, Minnesota. While I do support the increase in the deputies, and we have seen a significant increase in the last 18 years that I've lived here in crime in our neighborhood alone, I support that. But there should be a balance and accountability within Wright County. I personally work for a county that's significantly larger than Wright County. Our building, we don't have nearly the size of buildings as this campus, which then accountability goes to how much of these buildings sit vacant. I know most of us went and work at home. We pay for our electricity, we pay for our heat, we pay for our internet, we pay for our office space and everything else. So I know there's full floors in these buildings that now sit vacant. They do. The people went home to work.
If you want, I'm more than welcome to set
So-
up a day with you and we can walk through this building. I will, we can
All
do it during a business
campus.
day. I will walk you through all the whole campus. I'll walk you
Then I
through.
challenge you to look at other counties and what they're doing, because work from home is working really well. And I work within the 7-county metro, which much larger, progressive, county than Wright County. So maybe you need to consider looking at those models and saving on heat and lighting and everything else that goes with staff being within your building.
We do have a number of staff that work remotely as well. That was taken into account into this building as well. And
And we're still,
we're growing and adding more people working from home. So believe it or not, this building isn't as vacant as you may think. And the one area of it we built, because we built this building to be a 50, 100-year-old building that we don't have to add on to it. We have some shelled space that's vacant, but it's shelled. We're not heating it. We're not doing anything. It's just shelled space so that we're not adding onto this building in 10, 20 years because that would be a travesty as well.
Okay, and I can understand that too, because the levies go for so long. You don't have to ask for more because the levy is out there for 20, 25 years to pay for what was already built. And building costs are lower earlier. They get more expensive as we go. But you did say that for a $500,000 home, it was only a 1.25% tax?
taxable rate.
I gotta look at your a residential homesteaded home. Yep, it's 1.25 or 500 or above.
Okay, mine's 3%.
Uh,
Have it right here. I did the math.
that wouldn't be the 3%.
Valuation. What did your valuation?
On the
go?
valuation. My valuation is going up $82,800 between today and January 1st. My property value didn't go up. The valuation is significantly high. Now, I know this meeting is not for that, but the thing is the deception to the residents of Wright County. If we feel deceived, I don't mind the 6. I know those numbers that don't, like it's only $6. That's not even a blink of an eye to me. When my valuation was absurd increase, when I know I used to be in real estate, the market value, there's arguments out there. Some say it went down by 0.9%, others say it went up by 0.9%. But when my valuation increases by 17.5%, which I know I can't sell my home for this value. But what I'm getting at is this isn't a meeting about
you
that,
can't
but
sell your home for that value that's listed on there.
absolutely not.
Then I would strongly encourage you to come to the Board of Equalization then, because there has to be some articulable point to it that's being taken into consideration, that the value should be adjusted.
It should be adjusted. 82,000 on basically a very basic home, very like a quarter of an acre lot, basic home. But what I'm getting at about property values, and that's not this meeting, is that we want accountability. If we feel deceived, especially when we look at our values, then we're not going to support anything else because we feel like there's deception within government. We're going to hold everybody accountable. And the little bit amount for the Wright County, which I probably support most of it, but now I'm upset because my valuation is so incredibly out there. I don't trust anything about government here. I want to question everything.
Chairman, Kim, this is very frustrating, and it is frustrating for a lot of people, especially in Otsego. Otsego, for some reason, has had valuations go up. They built 260 homes last year. And the assessor, I talked to him yesterday, said, we're not seeing that growth in any other area of the county as much as Otsego and St. Michael. And property just was sold in Otsego, a 40-acre plot went for $50,000 an acre.
So then you just got to take into accountability that in 1 year after their closing, all those people will now become taxpayers. So consider lowering the levy because they're all going to be paying you taxes here in a couple of years.
But what I'm saying is that, okay, so the state of Minnesota dictates that we value the home by property values. So if you had people in your neighborhood, like the assessor always says, encourage your neighbors not to sell their house for so much because it basically goes at market value.
Well, that's not
And
what
it used to be assessed value and then market value, but now it is just market value. That is state guidelines that they have to, it's state statute. And so I would encourage you to go talk to the assessor.
Yeah,
He
I
actually
will.
grew up in Otsego, understands Otsego is seeing a big boom. I think a lot of it has to do with the better access on 101. It's attractive because it's close to the city. There's a lot of people moving in, and then too, Wright County is the fastest growing county in Minnesota right now, and we are bursting at the seams. And we have people working from home.
And I understand that. But it goes back to that assessor and the valuation. I was a realtor for 10 years. I was a law enforcement officer. I worked for the county. I've done a lot of different things. I can watch the home values in my neighborhood and how long they've been on the market, if they've been on the market 3, 4, 5 months now, and what their actual sale price is. I can watch and observe what's going on. But it goes back to accountability. At this point, you're losing, other than maybe Mike, but you're losing our trust. If you guys don't want to hold your assessor accountable, then I don't feel like the residents want to keep paying for that. And then when you do it per resident, like you said, it would be really difficult to divide this out per taxpayers. Taxpayers only care what the budget comes down to per taxpayer. They don't care what it comes back down to for all the people that aren't paying the taxes.
So, Kimberly,
I think to
two
go,
separate things here. One being your property yourself. Am I willing to hold the assessor accountable? Yes, but this is the first I've known you in your situation. I can't comment on what may or may not be taking place on your property. Am I willing to have conversations about that? Yes. Now, separately, as a commissioner in dealing with the budget, I need to make thoughtful decisions. I need to make decisions based not just on cutting expenses just purely for the sake of cutting expenses. Now, when looking at to Commissioner Kaczmarek's point, I will put the counterpoint to why 4 of us voted differently on that. And that was largely because of the expenses that were related around these other employees and the fact of services that were not being met and the risks that we had by not doing that. One of them was min choice assessments. And another one of them was the fact that if we don't meet these requirements or about our eligibility specialists and not adding those positions, the risks and fines that we have for not doing that, as well as the fact that we're paying overtime. And with our finance department, we were paying excess amount of overtime to the point that it actually made more sense to hire an employee versus in reducing some of those expenses from an overtime perspective. It's not just as simple as black and white. And that's where the fact that some of those numbers were actually going up exponentially, and we're trying to look at the solving the problem.
So I have a solution for some of that because I do work with min choices and eligibility specialists. There's no accountability. The case managers literally can put whatever value into those waivers that the case manager and the individual wanted to add for fees. So if I go on a CDCS waiver, which is a budget managed waiver, then the county and the state puts the limit. They say it's this amount. I have seen so much fraud.
I'm not going to deny that fact that
So you can keep hiring them, but if there's going to be fraud out there in the min choices and the waivers, I personally have seen one person on a waiver is $700,000 a year.
But it doesn't preclude us from meeting the state mandate. And let me tell you, Wright County is one of the most fiscally conservative health and human services in the state of Minnesota. Our caseloads are almost twice that of our comparable counties. We have some very dedicated workers, and we do not add staff to our health and human services lightly. We actually, to the point where I would almost borderline say that we almost overwork some of our health and human services staff because we are that tight on it. And so that's where I say we actually, one of our things that did this last year is we're actually bringing a fraud investigator internally because we want to be that diligent in making sure that state funds are being spent appropriately. We are on the other side of the spectrum from a lot of our peers across the state of Minnesota.
Well, I do 100% agree with that because I work with them, and you as well as us, we're all overworked, and what is accountable to me to accomplish. I agree with that. You need to add more, but we have to find a balance somewhere.
And I get it. And Kimberly, I would love to sit down and look at and see what's going on with your property, because if you're having 100% increase, there's more than the county budget is not driving that 100% increase. There has to be other factors that are happening on your property tax statement that are affecting it to that degree.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
since Kim mentioned me once, and I thank you. I got a maybe trust out of you, so I appreciate that. As far, and you mentioned this a couple times, the work from home deal, the previous board had to go over the work from home and policy and that whole thing. I actually voted against it. I ran it past a lot of constituents, and a question that came up is this compound cleaned, heated and cooled, whether the people are working here or not? And the answer is yes. Just the cleaning contract for the compound is over $700,000 a year. And it was suggested that maybe the pay be adjusted for the folks that work from home, because the county is expected to pay all these utilities and services plus the full wage for the person that's working comfortably from home. So it was addressed, it was talked about, but the consensus was to not adjust from what it is now. So I wanted to bring that up because there's a lot of money on the table that can be reflected in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. But Kimberly, whether after this meeting or at another time, I am happy to help you work through your property tax statement and see if there's other things going on there that maybe we can, if there was an error, I want to hold people accountable. I want to get that right because I don't want to lose your trust on that piece. And to me, I have a lot more concerns because the levy alone wouldn't drive you to have a 100% increase.
Right. Right. Well, I didn't say 100%.
Oh, sorry,
Increase.
or 17.3%.
17.8% on my property value, but
Or property value. Okay, your pay increase was okay. 17.3.
you said on a $500,000 home. My house isn't a $500,000 home, but it's now assessed over that now. But you said it was 1.25%. Mine's 3%.
Well, the 3%. I mean,
It's just Wright County line is going up 3%.
yeah, but that's not when I say 1.25%, that's your tax classification rate. So when calculating property taxes, you have to take your property value times your classification rate to equal your share of the capacity. And then you take your share of the capacity, and that's divided out with the levy to tell you what the tax rate is and what your pay amount is. So it's a kind of a complicated formula, and I should have put that slide in there. So I can print this out for you. This is kind of
Okay, I can take a look at that, and I missed the beginning of the meeting,
so
so that's partly my fault.
Yeah, no, that slide wasn't in the presentation, and I just remembered that oversight that I'll make sure that we get that in there in the future, so that way you have an understanding of. So that 3% is just what your increase is on your county share.
Well, I support Wright County just be very cognizant of the needs versus the wants, and holding that assessor accountable.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Kimberly. Anyone else like to comment? And come on up.
Hi. My name is Irv Walkman, and we have a mini storage property in Montrose, and I understand this is not perhaps the correct place to be talking about the taxation rate. I heard you say earlier that the tax rate on commercial property was 2%. We have a mini storage. It's a mom, my wife, and I have had it for probably 15 years. We got maybe about 50 rental units that we get $100 or less per month for these things. So our gross take on this for our taxes is about $42,000 a year. Our taxes last year were $17,000, and we just got the new notice they're going to over $23,000. We haven't been able to raise our rates, to remain competitive with the other operations in the county. And I'm just wondering, do you have a special thing going on with mini storages in particular? Because our assessed value and our property taxes both went up 35%, or they're proposed to for 2024. And I mean, then you get a renter that doesn't pay for 6 or 8 months, you got to kick them out, and you got to go get a dumpster for $500. I mean, it's ludicrous. So to try and the way we see it, we're doing a service for the community, giving them a place to store their stuff, and trying to keep the rent down and everything, but the taxes are, over half of our revenue. And I guess I'll have to talk to the assessor about it, but as long as I was here, I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
And I will absolutely. I'm the first person, before we met with you guys here today, we had a meeting with our legislators, and I cried foul, as I do every year, with the legislators about the issues with the property tax system and the inequities that it has. And it is the only mechanism that they give local government for raising funds. And yet they pass many mandates. Most of the things we do here at the county are all mandated services. And they tell you, well, you need to do this, and here's your mechanism to get it, property taxes. And it's broken right now, and it's getting magnified. Does it solve your problem immediately here? No. What I'm suspecting is probably happening is that your commercial property is, because anything on commercial property that's over 150,000 gets taxed at the higher rate. So
It's not 2%, excuse me, not, because 2%.
So you're at 1.5, 150,000 and below is at 1.5%. And then every dollar that you go beyond the 150,000, you're now taxed at the 2% classification rate. And so every year now that you're seeing any more increases, because it's going to jump exponentially, because every dollar increase in your value is now at this 2% rate versus
Right.
in the past it was at that 1.5. So that is one of the struggles that you're having with it.
Well, that's why, that's why I asked specifically about mini storages, because our rate is not 2%. If you figure it out, our new appraised value is 804,000. So our taxes, according to that, should be about 16.1. But they're going to be between 23 and 24,000. I mean, it's just, it's inconceivable that we can pay this type of taxes. I mean, our revenues can't go up, and I certainly can't put up any more buildings. We have 3 small buildings. Can't do any of it. I mean, as a business proposition, because of the taxation being the level it is, I mean, we can't even contemplate that. And then you throw in a mortgage on top of it, and it's just, it's undoable.
So this year is the wonderful complex tax classification rates in the state of Minnesota.
printed that
And
off.
I know there isn't any kind of exemptions for storage facilities or separate classifications. So we're kind of handcuffed here at the county on this based on state legislation. For you to get something changed, the legislator would have to create a new classification for storage units or something of that nature.
Well, let me ask you this, would it do me any good to talk to the assessor?
His hands are probably going to be pretty handcuffed, because he's going to pull up for you what comparables he used to come up with determining the value of your property. And I don't think your argument is whether your property is worth 700,000 to 800,000. It's more about what you have to pay, and that's more of an issue
Relative to revenue?
to revenue. Yes,
I mean,
but
what
the
business
state's
can suffer 60% taxation on the revenue?
that's where the issue where the state property tax system is broken, because it doesn't take into the ability of a business's ability to cash flow. It just bases it on the asset itself. So yes, the property might be worth 800,000, but it's not able to cash flow a $17,000 a year property tax. I was in a business that was in the same industry. I had a restaurant that I was paying over $60,000 a year in property tax. My business was complicated to be able to cash flow a $5,000 a month property tax. Because this property tax system doesn't have a mechanism to take a revenue-based approach, it will slowly cripple businesses like yours out of business. The legislator needs to take action. I will wholeheartedly agree, but it's not a tool that we have here to do that.
Very good, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Irv.
I'm with you, and I'm happy to put you in connection with some good legislators that I'm trying to get their ear on, because something has to happen. I pounded my fist in a room here before, so.
The property tax bill comes from Wright County.
Pardon me?
The property tax bill comes from Wright County.
Isn't that funny how that works too? We get to be the bad guys. They tell us what we have to do. We get to charge you for it, and we don't have an option but to do it. And this is the only way we can get the funds to do it is under their rules. It's sad. Anyone else like to comment for the record? Yes, Lane, you want to make another comment for? Is there anybody else beforehand? Is this our last one? Because we're going to close it up here with Lane. Anybody else want to take a comment for the record? Lane, I'll give you a short 3 more minutes here.
3 minutes?
About 3-4 minutes. We're trying to keep it fair.
I didn't think you had a limit on how much time you could spend up there. That's my understanding of TNT meetings.
Well, we've given you more than that already, but I'm not holding you to it. But
That's
as
mostly
long as
bec-
we're on the budget, we're good. Lane. We're good.
I
Lane.
understand. So if you can help me with this, because I've always been a little confused. In most situations, most taxing entities, when the tax capacity growth continues to increase like it is in Wright County, it says 17.31 if I'm to believe that, right? Tremendous growth, right? A lot of new properties on there, whether it be primarily residential, some commercial, but mostly residential, right? I'm a little confused why, because people have always said, if your growth is like it is like that, you're amortizing that growth over that and your taxes overall should stay flat. Can you comment on that?
I will. So what's happening here is that there's bigger increases in values on residential than that in commercial. So that is rounding out the growth of new construction. New construction was only 2.63. We didn't have an exponential amount of new construction growth. Most of the growth that you see, that 17.3, is just a shift in value of residential property. And so yes, it says we have a lot of new growth, new value, new capacity, but only 14.5% of that is actual, or 14.5 of that is just increased values. And now you look at that number, the commercial and industrial didn't have nearly that growth. So then it's a shift. Then you're getting a bigger piece of the pie. You're being responsible for paying more of the county's budget.
I realize that it depends upon what your valuation is and whether you're paying more, or if your valuation is less than the average, you're paying less than the average person, or you might go down. So it's disturbing that, the spending in the county continues to grow. I understand the issue with sheriffs. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in the Hennepin County, certainly not the Minneapolis City Council meetings talking about sheriff retention, that's for sure. But I have a hard time, and this goes back to the transparency issue some. This is the county budget. This is the only thing that I can look at when I look at the website. It's very hard to read this, and I understand to some extent that it's difficult. It's not like the City of St. Michael budget, which is very easy to follow. This has a lot of buckets. And it's very difficult to follow the buckets because I know there's shifts on things. So the only choice I have is to look at a couple things and ask you questions. Okay? So I realize the sheriff part is $4 million additional expending. I understand why. But I don't understand completely the finance and taxpayer services going from 3.6 to 6.0.
That is shift in where it was recognized elsewhere in the budget.
How would anybody, unless you worked within the county government system, how would you know how to follow things?
But that's okay. I mean, I guess we could put a whole bunch of cliff notes at the bottom of it, but it would get to the point where it would be about a 5-page cliff note piece on the bottom of it, and we'd have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different numbers on each line item. That is where you actually rely on your elected official to ask them questions with it, and let me be able to explain it to you.
How would I know that? I mean, how would I know which ones to look at? Because I don't even know when this thing popped up on the Wright County webpage.
That was in there in September.
Okay. Me, because I'm one of those weird people that like to look at budgets, I would appreciate that. I would think it'd be easier to have a popcorn trail with those footnotes on things.
Fair enough. It'd just be hard as to where do we draw that line? Do we do it to every dollar that shifts?
Where you have the fund shifts, you need to keep track of them. How would you know otherwise?
I mean, there's shifts that are really small. I mean, do I do it for
don't
every
mean,
$10?
you know what I'm saying?
I
Okay,
know,
pick a
but
parameter.
Pick a parameter.
It's not
whether
that difficult.
A shift of 10,000, 50,000, 100,000.
So another example is the fleet department. Okay, so there was nothing in 2023. I'm assuming this is another shift, or maybe there's something else.
Yes, because we went to a centralized fleet management and we pulled it up. We used to budget all of our cars universally within each budget, or within each department. But to actually save on the purchasing of fleet vehicles, we actually are now no longer budgeting them individualized. We're doing it holistically and actually saving us from having to purchase cars. And we're actually better able to have a universal policy on how we liquidate them and how we value them, and then a better accounting on the mileage for them as well from a auditing perspective.
Okay. Obviously, the social services aspect is also increasing dramatically, 15% for most of the buckets there. I don't know what administration was before and where it went to.
Where administration went
Within
to.
the Health and Human Services.
It was, administration had its own pot, now it moved between each of the.
Public health, social services, and financial services. They broke it out into the 3 different pieces.
Again, one would never know that unless you spend a lot of time talking to people. And do I want to bother the county commissioners and maybe other people asking the same question?
And this is it's hard I appreciate these comments because it's a discussion that we always have as to how much can you educate the public on this information and what does that look like that we can make it in a digestible form for you, much less anyone else. You're a pretty good study of the budget, so I appreciate your perspective on it. Because then even other people out there, if I put those cliff notes in there, it's going to go.
I mean, I have to look at it from the 36,000 foot level, not the 5,000 foot level where I really want to look at it, right? That's the only comment I'll make on it.
Sure.
The last thing is, and I know it wasn't mentioned in Lee's presentation, all I've heard in the past in the presentations is that 85% of the budget is mandated by the state or the federal government or whatever else. My question is, how much of that within the mandated services or whatever is spending on there, how much flexibility does the county have within the actual items that need to be mandated, need to be complied with? How much flexibility in terms of priorities, staffing, spending, all of that sort of stuff?
So there's a depending on what area and what mandate, Health and Human Services, there's a pretty hard line on a lot of the items. Is that like out-of-home placements? You have a certain period of time, and then you get yourself put on performance improvement plans with the state, and then at a certain point you start leveraging yourself penalties for it, or you get reduced state and federal aid. So that's from a Health and Human Services perspective. But then there's also some of the mandates from. You're mandated to plow the roads. Okay, that one's a pretty gray area, right? I mean, we have some subjective as to how often we plow, but that's largely driven by my citizen complaints. More often than not, I get people that call me and complain that the roads aren't plowed soon enough. I rarely get anybody that says, I really wish they didn't drive the plow in front of my house this morning. It's a safety factor.
Pick a different bucket than that. That's not quite a fair comparison.
Okay, so I'm trying to think of some of the different mandates. Off
Parks.
The top. Parks not mandated.
That's right, it's not
That's not
mandated.
mandated. So just figure out ones that are mandated services would be veteran services. Okay, you have a area that that's probably not even a good comparison. So.
Tax, elections cost us money. That's all.
Elections are mandated, but you don't have much choice in how you operate them.
That's another one. It's very defined. A lot of things that we do that are mandated are very defined in scope. Because like from a law enforcement perspective, I mean, you have the ability, okay, yes, we have to respond to a 911 call. How much time? What's reasonable? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Same with like keeping people in your jail. The thing you should be really kind of upset about is the amount of money that we collect for the people that are incarcerated here in Wright County. I mean, the collection side of it is pretty poor because most of the people that get locked up, we end up having to write that off, and that's your money. That's local tax dollars. That's not state-funded money. That's your money, and that's money that you should be upset about.
Of course I am.
And then the other thing is out-of-home placements. Do you realize that is a 7-figure expense in Wright County for out-of-home placements? And almost well over 50% of that is local money, and it's driven by less than 100 people. 100 people are costing you 7 figures, and over 50% of it is coming from your property taxes. Those are the things, and we're mandated. We have to do this. If they need a place to stay, we have to put them in a place to stay. And the state's going to give us 45 cents if we're lucky on the dollar.
And see, this is the type of discussion that I think is relevant for the public that live in Wright County to understand what's happening. So they understand when they get their property tax statement that their property taxes for Wright County just went up 10% or 100% or whatever it is. They don't understand that. How do you explain that to the people? The type of examples you're talking about here, why it is that's happening. Because you're not getting it from whatever you're seeing elsewhere.
Well, and I appreciate the feedback because, I mean, we want to do a better job in conveying. And I'm just listing those because those are two of the big expenses that we've had here in the county is our jail expenses and then our expenses that are related to out-of-home placements is one of our biggest increases in health and human services this year. And it's sad because that is your local money that very few handful of people are driving.
Right.
And until we can get a hold on mental health and get places for people to stay, it's going to keep costing us more money because there's no place for us to get them. And the few places that take them charge astronomical amounts of money. And we have no choice but to pay it.
Understood. So thank you for your time. And again, thank you for allowing me to ask questions. I'm going to talk to Nadine later on. I'd like to talk to you in a separate meeting at some point.
Always, Elaine. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Phil, come on up.
James Vanderlyn, City of Monticello. Yeah, this is tough stuff. I've talked to Derek a few times about things going on. Lived in Monticello for 16 years. So what are some of, I don't know if we can recap it quickly, what are some of the big things that have been cut out of the budget to get it down to this like 4.8%?
You guys want to go or you want me
Maybe
to?
just pick the top, the three biggest.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I got one thing when the departments and offices were asked to make cuts. One office instead changed their revenue by $1 million. On paper, they plan or intend to make an extra $1 million. But what does that look like if they don't make it? Yeah, that reduces the levy on paper by $1 million. But that might be one of the biggest, and it was out-of-county jail prisoner fees that other counties bring their prisoners here and we collect. But that's probably the one biggest change that I can think of when that reduction process got underway that last time, and we got it back. That was $1 million turnaround.
So
Maybe someone else
that
can
dropped at $1 million?
Yes.
So that
You
was
wanted one big one, that's one.
yeah, so that was this year?
Yep.
Right.
Yep. We actualized a $1 million increase in revenue from boarding prisoners. One to two factors. Two factors is that we made some changes in our employment contracts that were able to get us employees where our competitors that are in the corrections industry were challenged to be able to get fully staffed. So us being able to open up another pod allowed us to be able to take in prisoners from Benton County, Stearns County, and subsequent other counties, as well as the state DOC. And we were able to also, on top of that, increase our rate because there is such a challenge to get corrections officers. So this number wasn't just thrown out there on a whim. We already had the people and we already had the revenue trending at that. So we just actualized what we were intending to get based on current revenue stream.
And Mr. Chair, but I think we're talking about two things though. One is actualizing and one is intending, and that's different. There's still the speculation piece. So stay tuned and check back middle of next year and see how close we got.
Okay.
I guess maybe the others can think of two other big reduction pieces. I don't know.
Mr. Chair, we spent hours going line by line, just really pouring through our staff. We told them, a number, and then, they came back very thrifty. We didn't like the number, so we made them all go back and just say, see if you can swipe
job.
at it again. And it was at 8%, and we had it, then we swiped it down to the 4.8. And we were comfortable with that, because we knew the cities were gonna take a big hit, especially with our law enforcement, contract. And so, and, you know, we're at a point too where, you know, we had to be comfortable with, you know, if you stress the staff too much, they quit. And, you know, we wanted to make sure that we weren't cutting too much so that they get so burdened with overtime that they decide they'll go to another county. You know, so I was really proud of our staff for going in and taking another swipe at it. I know that was really hard for them. They weren't happy with us at all, but I think for me, I feel really good about it, and I think the rest of us are really proud of our staff for that.
So some of our cuts that we made a substantial amount of savings in the fleet management. That going to the fleet management saved a substantial amount of money, as well as we made some reductions in fuel cost as well. We made some reductions in overtime costs across the county. Just kind of pulling up some of my other notes here on some of the changes within the budget, but some of the other ones, we had some savings within Health and Human Services that were around the min choices and waivered services, but those all got absorbed up by increases in out-of-home placements. So we saved in one area only to have to increase in another. So it was rob Peter to pay Paul on that point of it. But the biggest thing that drove in the budget on this one, we couldn't make enough cuts for the increased law enforcement costs from a labor perspective on that. That was one of the bigger pieces that challenged us. Oh, you want to talk these off, Nadine? Some of these other ones? You had your sheet.
Sure. So some of them that I know that, and like Jeannie said, we worked several hours, hours turned into days, turned into weeks. And I really do feel like we did a really good job. Not saying that we can't even do a better job next year. We are holding very high standards to ourselves. Things that get mandated through the state are some of our appropriations that we had to. We made our appropriations look into what they were doing, what they were spending their money on. So we made other people look at their budgets as well. And again, those are mandated. So we have to do something for them. Again, we made them relook at them, and then we made them relook at them again. So we probably weren't the most favorable by some of these people. So I really do feel that we did cut the line on 3 really big appropriations, and I appreciate their work on it and looking at their schedules as well. What other ones here?
Well, because you made the Historical Society, you listed those out, the Wright County Economic Development Partnership. You made big reductions on both of them. I mean, those reductions to them were reductions in the double digits, not just a 5%. They were upwards of 15, 20% reductions in their budget. They're actually having to make some huge, substantial discussions on how they operate. But the biggest thing that I want, James, and you know this from, I've told you this many times in our conversation, I don't want to save you $10 today only to grab $30 tomorrow. Because so I'm looking at sustainability in your property taxes. And as you've seen from the county's perspective in relations to our cohorts, the county's proportion is small and incremental changes to it, and I want to keep it at that even less. And we're working our way there, and we've made great decisions that have gotten us to the point where we're at now. We were able to actualize over $500,000 more on investment income because we're leveraging more of our money by understanding our cash flow and being able to invest more of our money to get a greater return on your dollars to offset your property taxes. A lot of it's about being better managers of the money at this point because Wright County is so lean. If you look at Wright County has the least in number of per capita employees per citizen to any other county in the state of Minnesota. When you factor in the fact that we have contracted law enforcement. So you factor that in, we have the least number of employees. In some cases, almost on a 2-to-1 comparable. So, and that's the truth in the pudding. So when you're already the leanest in the state on a per capita for employees to citizens, and this is county government is a service-driven industry, personnel costs are the biggest expense in any county across the state, bar none. We have to then, we don't have a lot of other cuts that we can make. So we're already as lean as we can be. So we're trying to,
I want to talk about public
Sure.
sector staff at some point here, because that seems to be a big part of
well,
things. It's like 80% probably.
yeah.
So, because I'm going to some of these meetings. I mean, my city tax has gone up like 15%. School district's gone up like 13%. I mean, there's been like a 25% almost increase in the last couple of years, if I keep going down the road here. So, I mean, you guys have to keep that in mind, that there's massive increases going on with your cohorts, and you got to keep that in mind, and you probably have. I know you've spent hours and hours and whatnot, but you got to keep that in mind, because, I mean, I won't be happy until I see through every sector only a 1% to 2% increase. That's all I ever want to see, and I'm going to probably start coming to these meetings every year and shooting for that, just because we are overtaxed. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, but with staff, and this is a real tender subject that I'm just kind of continuing to discover, because a lot of these costs are caught up with staff. And I mean, there's some public sector staff that make huge salaries that I don't agree with. So as far as looking at some of that, I mean, what staff in Wright County, what percentage roughly, I don't know if this is an impossible number, is mandated to have? Would you say?
The
Like
number of
the
employees that were
staffers are mandated by the state to have?
They don't mandate the number of staff. They mandate caseloads. They mandate response times or mandate things that we have to do. They don't always give us a target exactly. Then it, like from a 911 dispatch, they don't tell us how many times it has to ring to answer the call. We just have to have somebody to answer the call.
Okay.
So what's reasonable? 50 rings? 5 rings? So we have to staff it based on what's the call demand, and that's how that one's determined. But from a min choice assessment to a MA eligibility application, it's based on meeting a time factor from when the person applies. We have X number of days to get that application processed. And that's what drives the number of employees that we have for it. So all of them have different metrics for it.
Okay.
There's no magic number that your population is 142,000, you need to have X number of employees. That's not
So
it.
but I mean, there's some mandates though for like police or different things. Isn't there some mandates?
No, there's no, they're mandated to, like from a city is required to have and I don't know the statute on it, to have a law enforcement presence, okay? And
So
in
that
Wright
would
County,
require-
like Monticello, where we live.
That would require
they
some people.
contract, Yep, so they contract with Wright County for that service.
Okay.
But it
So
doesn't
if
tell
Wright
them.
County cut their public sector staff in half, nothing would happen.
No, it depends on what we.
I mean, from the state level, would
and
something happen from the state level?
Yes.
Okay.
Because a certain amount of them, they'll do the work for us then, and then they will charge us exponential to do that same min choice assessment is going to cost you 3 times more. So you would have been better off having the employee. They're just going to do it. So then in this case, if you didn't do that min choice assessment, the state will do it. They'll charge you twice the rate, and that person's going to be having to wait a really long time to get it. So then you're a double losing. You're getting bad service, and you're paying 3 times the rate for it. So you don't want that either.
Okay. All right. Well, just some things to look at with our staff, and I know you're saying that we're lean, but watching overtime, watching massive salaries, and then I know a big one is the union costs, and how high those go up, and that's a tender subject, but it's a big deal. The public sector is so unionized, it's ridiculous. And I don't know what can be done there, but be strong with that one. Any comments on that?
I mean, I'm going to say we're close to probably 70% of employees of the 800 staff in the county are belong to some union of some capacity,
Yeah.
if not.
Makes it tough.
It makes it tough, and
Really tough.
especially two of those unions have binding arbitration. So at this state point, it's not even a strike part. It's a arbitrary, or an arbitrator is going to decide, you want this, they want this, you get this. So it's not even a situation where even if we couldn't afford it, we can't hold out. A third party is going to determine what you get.
And Chairman, we also have to deal with equity, so.
equity loss.
So Baker Tilly just had to do a comp study to make sure that one department isn't getting paid more than another department, a woman's not getting paid less than a man. You know, so there's so many things that are coming at us. And very frustrating. You know, our assessor, this year, we had to add an assessor because Corinna Township decided not to, that assessor retired or left. So then our already heavily used assessor's office was scrambling because it happened right when they were, you know, the busy season of summer. So we had to hire somebody, you know, just because there's just so many properties that they had to go and assess. And so there's things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. I mean, I've worked in private business all my life, and I mean, I've seen job cuts and things happen, and they just put more work on you, and that's just the way it is, and it can be like that in the public world too.
Yeah.
So it's just the way it is. But I appreciate your time. I know this isn't easy, so I appreciate everybody's time. Derek, I've appreciated all your time a lot.
You got my number. You know,
I know, and I'll call it.
I appreciate it.
But keep working hard. I mean, everybody here would probably like to see another cut of some sort. Let's take that 4.8 and get it down to 4.2.
And
You know, it all makes a difference when we're seeing these massive increases in your cohorts.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. So this is real money, real people. Okay? Dead serious. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to comment? Anyone else want to comment? Anyone else want to comment? Hearing none, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. I appreciate everyone's time. The final levy at this time will be adopted with any changes or as is on December 19th. I appreciate everyone for coming, and have a great evening. If any of you have some questions about some of the assessed values, I can take a stab at seeing if I can help answer some of the questions based on my knowledge. All right, thank you.